Greetings and salutations. Wanted to tell my friends on the podcast here about our support from the brothers at Barossa Transport. You can check them out at barossatransport.com. Now listen, Barossa Transport offers a comprehensive service for all your transportation and property needs, including vehicle transport, heavy equipment hauling, you need your property cleaned up, material delivery, whatever it is, their dedicated team ensures reliable and efficient service. So, there's any solution you need tailored to your specific project requirements, Barossa Transport's got you covered. They can deliver your gravel if you got a road you need to cover, you need a water delivery, you need some debris hauled off, some branches, some heavy equipment moved around, dust maintenance and mitigation is coming up here in the summertime. All of it, roll off dumpsters, scrap metal recycling, trailer and vehicle transportation. I'm just going to stop right there because the list goes on and on. But you can call Barossa Transport now at 707-358-2859 for a free quote and have Barossa Transport transport your stuff today. Also going to tell you about Thompson Construction. Big shout out to Kyle at Thompson Construction. Hey, I've been wearing the hat all day. And listen, you got excavating and grading needs, general engineering contractor based in Ukiah. You need some septic work done, any of that kind of stuff. Because trust me, this work is hard to find. The specialized septic system installation and repairs is hard to find in Ukiah. You need pond construction, agricultural stuff done. You want to line a pond, keep it from losing water in those hot summer days. You need a retaining wall, hiding, hillside grading, drainage systems, any of that stuff. Listen, this is OQ certified for PG&E, excavating and backfill. You need a swimming pool, fuel management, demolition. Again, what can't Kyle at Thompson Construction do? So, Thompson Construction, they love what they do, and they take the utmost pride in their work and customer satisfaction. With great attention to detail, no job is too big or too small for some of you out there, okay? So don't be shy that your job's too small. Just give them a call today at 707-391-7679. Ladies and gentlemen, sharpen up your axes and bring them down to the Thirsty Axe. Lots of fun for the whole family. Bring your friends, hide your kids, hide your wife, because we're throwing axes. It's a good time. Listen, you can go down and do karaoke on Wednesdays, trivia's on Thursdays. That's the jam. They got a pretty cool, sleek red room upstairs. You can hang out and have a cocktail or two, go down, shoot some pool, get some entertainment done. I've seen lots of good shows there as of late. So get out there and do it. All right. Go down to the Thirsty Axe at thirstyaxe.com. Check them out on School Street, Thirsty Axe. Yo, I like to keep it clean, and the way I do that, every 2 weeks I go down to Pure Blend's Barbershop and get faded. Listen, voted best barbershop in Lake and Mendocino counties. That's a thrice piece, 3 years in a row, right? 3-piece in a soda. Every year they're the best, and that's saying a lot because there's quite a few options out there when it comes to getting your hair cut, but no options are as good as the ones at Pure Blend's Barbershop. So go see your boys. You got to call for an appointment because they be getting booked. 707-472-6097, Pure Blend's Barbershop. DC Customs.
Customs.
Sounds like something out of a comic book, but that's what your vehicle looks like when these guys are done. It's really, really cool, man. I'd be sharing all of their cool stuff they do on Instagram. So listen, DC Customs, whether you want to get new tires, rims, slam it, jack it up high, run it through some sand, whatever you want to do, these guys can make it happen and make it look cool in the process. If you want to check out what they can do, go to dccustoms.net or call them today at 707-463-2227 and customize your vehicle today. Really excited to announce a new sponsor, Cali Mobile Detailing. Oh my gosh, you guys. Listen, this is a local Ukiah-based small business with a passion to provide an exceptional detail service, whether you're in Mendocino or Sonoma County. And when I say exceptional, I mean it. He detailed Carter's mom's car, and that thing looks absolutely brand new. It's unbelievable. So like he can do the inside of it, right? And do it super professional, interior carpet, seed extraction, steam cleaning, all those tight spots that you can't get with your fat knuckles. He can do it, okay? And he'll do it with a professional grade leather vinyl plastic conditioner that'll bring everything back to life. Or if your exterior is busted like mine, you can go through it, hand wash it, clean all the wheels, get the tar off of things, he calls it like a clay bar treatment, which removes the contaminants embedded in the coat, in the paint. It's crazy. So listen, you got the foggy headlights, they can take care of that too. I know you got like a 1999 Honda Accord over there, and those headlights, rubbing Coca-Cola on them isn't going to keep working. So this guy can do it for you. Get that fog out of there so you can shine bright like a diamond. Paint correction too. If you got some scratches, let's get rid of those. So listen, here's the catch. You got to mention you heard about him, through the Like It or Not podcast, and you'll receive $50 off the Works package, baby. That's it. Pickles and onions. So remember to mention Like It or Not for your next detail. So you can find them on IG. That's Instagram for you boomers out there at Cali_mobile_detailing and DM him, or just give him a call at 707-510-7373 and ask for Nick. Again, 707-510-7373.
My name is Carter Lane.
I'm Drew Nickel.
Welcome to the show. Oh my God. I think you have a problem, bro.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my goodness.
Hey yo.
Hey.
What's going on, everyone out there in Like It or Not land?
Yeah, another episode.
We're back.
Beautiful weather we're having too, man. Not too hot yet. I'm loving it.
Today's been great.
Yeah, 80s. I'll take 80s ladies all day long.
Yeah, me too.
Wait, not my ladies in their 80s, but you
take 80-year-old ladies all day long, huh? We've got to tell your wife that joke.
Don't tell her much, okay? She's not in the mood.
Hey, what's the our producer says we have a number that he wants us to give out to people. 707-234-8926 is Drew and I's new phone number. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can call that number anytime. Leave a message for us. Share one of your stories. Leave us a comment about one of our episodes, a guest that we have on, something you agree with, what you don't agree with, anything like that.
Guest suggestions. If you got people you want us to have on the show, you can call that number and let us know, and we will definitely get it. So what else?
707-234-8926 is the number.
YouTube is growing. Thank you. You can find us on YouTube at Like It or Not Podcasts. And always you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify. Give us a 5-star review. And shout your boys out. We'd appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Enough bill paying here.
Enough.
Anyway, so today we have Shannon Riley, Deputy City Manager. Did I say that right?
You said that right.
For the wonderful city of Ukiah.
We got the deputy on.
Where we live.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate you taking the time to come on.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Lots going on in City Land, huh?
So much.
Yeah. Pull that microphone just a little closer to you. That way we can hear you nice and strong.
How's that?
That's good. Point it up right at your mouth. There you go.
Perfect.
So you got a lot going on.
We have so much going on.
Yeah.
Would you like us to pave Gobi Street already?
What is the deal with Gobi? Let's talk about it. Thank you. I was hoping you'd
Right off
ask.
the bat, Drew, she knows what you're going to ask.
You know, my car fell in a hole and I came out, but my car stayed in it. So I don't know. Can the city give me a new car? Can I borrow one?
It's going to be the next public swimming pool.
So what's
all the potholes will merge.
I thought that's what you guys were installing in the center lane there, the new city swimming pool.
They're going to be hot tubs this time.
That would be awesome.
You'd pump some of that Vichy spring water right into them.
Yeah.
Little personal spas.
Yeah.
So that's a big project you guys are taking head on.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, ordinarily we wouldn't have taken on 3 of our main streets all at once, but because we rely so heavily on grants, we had an opportunity for a huge grant, and all 3 of those projects, Gobi, Main, and Perkins, were already designed. So we said, well, well, let's just throw them all in the application and see what happens. And lo and behold, we got the grant. So
Oh my gosh.
it's been a huge challenge navigating that. And I know how disruptive it's been. And we appreciate people's patience or not or whatever. But the end is near, I promise. We're paving Gobi Street this week, actually. We started.
No way.
It's happening.
Can I cut the ribbon?
It's happening. I know.
I figured you just had to do it because someone looked in a pothole and saw China in the bottom and was like, okay, I think we have to.
That was the grant application. It was just the picture of China down the hall.
Yeah, they're like, hey,
That's when you know it's time.
Yeah.
it's hot down there, huh?
But this has been a long process, right? Too?
We
Like how long?
started last summer.
Last summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's taking so long because we're replacing all of the underground utilities too. And so like most people think, well, you just dig one trench and then you throw the water, the sewer, and the electric in there, right? But you can't do that. They're each separate trenches. They're separate contractors sometimes.
Rules and regulations
so you
around
got,
all of that.
You know, from one end to the other for one trench, do it again for the next one, do it again for the next one. And that's why the road looks like it does. So it's getting there. So it's going to be paved, buttoned up this week. And then in about 2 more weeks, we're going to start paving Main Street finally.
Okay.
Yeah,
Look at us.
we're getting there.
Guy's going to shine its shoes, huh?
And then what's next?
Yeah,
What's-
and then Perkins Street is after that.
Oh, boy.
Perkins.
Yeah.
Ooh,
All
that'll be
right.
a fun one.
Are we going to put more stoplights in? I'm sure.
I think we have 8 programmed. Does that sound about right?
Oh, that sounds like a lot.
No, but we are replacing the lights that are there, so they'll
You're
be,
funny.
quote unquote smarter. And we're improving the intersection up at Orchard and Perkins because that's Ukiah's big traffic jam, right? If you've ever had
Yeah.
to leave Ukiah at 5 p.m., you might have to sit through 2 stoplights or something. That's traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're adding an additional eastbound lane and improving the functionality of that intersection in general. So that does a couple things. It eliminates that traffic jam at peak hours, and then it also facilitates evacuation. God forbid we should ever have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're here at the Like It or Not podcast studio, and you could tell getting off. We got to take that left off of going on 101 South, getting off on Perkins, taking that left at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's brutal,
It is brutal.
but I've made it this far. It's like Frogger. Okay. It's good though.
And you're putting in a road to out here
Well,
Or is that
that's-
county?
That's the county.
That's county.
as it stands now.
Yeah. Well, and in the future. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not
we'll
part-
get to annexation, but this area is not part of the scope of annexation. So.
Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, putting in a road to out here.
I'm excited about that. Actually, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because just
Safety.
we're out at the end of Redemeyer, not to disclose our location too much, but
We don't want the fans coming knocking in at the door, dude.
did you say Trump? Oh no, they got pitchforks. But it's just a lot of driving to go. Like I go to Willits, Redwood Valley, all of that, and going all the way around. And I was like adding it up. It's like 30, 40 minutes a day. So I will be set free by that road.
Yes.
It's kind of funny how those kinds of things that we don't think about because you just get so used to it, but like it's kind of a big deal. It drastically changes people's living experience.
Completely.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Developing that and not making a mistake and like, no matter what you do, someone's going to be upset, but
Yeah, that's true. I
You
will
know what I
say
mean?
that I get yelled at all the time about our construction projects because we're all drivers. We all use the streets. Therefore, we are all experts in street construction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And parking and all of those things. We know
100%.
because we do it. And so that's a tough conversation with some people.
well, it's just like they're going to complain if the road sucks, and then they're going to complain if you fix it, and then they're going to complain about the way you fixed it, and then,
Exactly.
do they ever come and say, good job? That's just really
No.
nice, right? Kind of.
I guarantee 2 weeks after Gobi's paved, like they've forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
And that's the good and the bad of it, right?
Yeah,
We
and-
want them to just experience good streets and not think about it. Like we
That's
do
right.
now.
Because to their, as a citizen, or what is that what you call them? Constituents, citizens in Ukiah? What are we?
Sure.
We're Ukiahans.
City Ukiahans?
Ukiahans.
You
I
should
like
just
it.
drive down the road and not think, wow, this is so shitty or this is so amazing. It should
Exactly.
just be.
You shouldn't think about the street you're on.
Exactly. It should be like the one thing about my day I don't have to think about.
That's a perfect way to describe
And
it.
so that's why it's like you just got to maintain homeostasis for all of these people, and then it's all right, I guess.
You know what was a really good example of that, I thought, was when the Costco was going in.
Oh.
And the renegotiation of that intersection and those roads and the stoplight and getting off the freeway and all that was happening. And
Nobody
people were
thought that would
losing their
work.
minds. And they're like, these people are idiots.
You fools!
What are you thinking?
It'll never work.
And now it's just like, whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
Get-
Or
It's wild, right?
oh my
Traffic engineering
gosh.
is magical. And I tell this to people all the time. I'm like, it's not intuitive, but you have to trust the process, right? Just like, and I use that one, the Costco, that interchange as an example. I'm like, everybody said it wouldn't work. We're going to have backups onto the freeway, but it works. It works beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Trust the experts.
Trust the experts. Thank you.
or just that it took 20 years for Costco to get here. And then once it did, like you go there on a Saturday and 95% of the town and county is in Costco.
And more all the time. Their
It's
business is continuing to grow. We're getting more and more people from Cloverdale coming. They're like,
Yeah.
if I can drive half an hour to Ukiah, beautiful drive, cute little town, or half an hour to Santa Rosa, chaos, madness,
Traffic.
Yeah. And it crushes.
traffic.
Like
Real
Costco's
traffic.
a well-run business. Like that, they got their stuff together, and that's another one of those examples of like it improves the quality of people's life living, whatever the radius is around it. Like you're saying, Cloverdale, so 30-mile radius around it.
Well, and I
At least
imagine a bunch of
living
people
here.
from Lake County.
100%.
Come here?
Yeah, even before
We're the
they
closest
open.
for
So
them, right?
Costco does an amazing job with their environmental and demographic studies and everything, and they've got access, of course, to everything. So they have demonstrated that within a half-hour radius of that Costco, they have a customer base of over 104,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and they do. They're happening.
Yeah.
Let's go, baby.
I remember going in there the first, year or so that it was open, and there was like, it was a completely different experience than going to the one in Santa Rosa where it's just packed and you could fight for a parking spot and all this stuff. And it was just like so easy to get in and find a parking spot, and there wasn't any lines and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
recently I've been like, all right, this place is growing now. Now there's lines. Now there's a little bit of parking issue,
Yeah.
but it's good.
Yeah.
How great is that?
That's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's better than driving an hour to go get it.
No,
So much better.
yeah, and I, since you asked, I'm very pro like growth and like
Drew, are you pro growth? And
I like things planned well and done well that make people's lives better. And you can
Yes.
see that in so many different towns. Like I get to go to a lot of different places, and you can really see how when they bring certain things, whether that be stores, shopping centers, things for people to do, like it really makes people's life experience in the town better. And I think the problem, like the push and pull, is the planned growth. But also sometimes, if we're being honest, Shannon, is like, city and county getting in the way of letting people do business with, because they have all of the different, permitting fees and costs and red tape and rules and regulations. And that some of that is kind of like, shown itself in downtown, right? Because there's a lot of buildings in the core, downtown area that are just empty and nothing's going on. And people are kind of like, well, if I fix it, then that's going to trigger, the city wanting me to go and do a whole upgrade to all, current code in this 50 to 100-year-old building. And that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's just not feasible with where the economy is right now to make it work. So there's this push and pull where it's like, yeah, we can grow and have amazing things and plan the streets, and get a Costco and whatever else, makes life better for the people here. But there's two sides to that sword. So you got the, I guess we could just get into it, right? So
Yeah.
now we have annexation on the table here.
Well, can we talk about the building thing for just a second?
Yeah, I would love
Because we
to.
hear that a lot, and I
Yeah.
understand the frustration. And, we see it too. We drive down the street, we see the building next to the Forest Club that's been vacant forever.
Right.
So it's not just city hoops. You talk about bureaucracy and things like that. Government is known for its hoops, but the city is also legally required to enforce state and federal mandates,
Sure.
like state building codes, state fire codes, federal ADA laws, things like that. And so it's our application of those things, which we're legally bound to do, that creates those barriers to development. And so because some of these buildings have been neglected or abandoned for so long, any improvement, any significant improvement triggers building code, fire code, all of these things. And so before you know it, you were planning a minor remodel, but now you've triggered the requirement for fire sprinklers. That's not the city though. We're the ones who have to, we're the messenger.
Yeah.
So shoot the messenger, right?
But it's still, even though it's not the city, it's still a function of
Government.
dysfunctional government.
It's a barrier.
These laws,
100%.
they don't work. It is a barrier because to get a return on your money to fix it up, like you just passed laws that basically guaranteed that your buildings are going to be shitty for a long time because it doesn't pencil out.
You're right. Yeah.
And so we have people who...
And is the reason that it pencils out in other towns and other places that are successful in growth because they're not retrofitting older buildings, they're building new buildings?
In some cases, that's true. So, and different states have different requirements. But if we're just talking about California, then yes, older buildings have different requirements. The type or the level or scope of improvements will trigger different things. But I kind of lost my train of thought there. But you said, what was the question?
I notice other places growing easier, it
Yes.
seems like.
Yeah, and it usually has to do with the market. Right now, Ukiah's commercial rents are still comparatively low. And, if you're a business owner in a space, you're probably complaining about how expensive everything is. And it is. Life is expensive right now. But if you're paying Healdsburg, Sonoma rents, then that property owner can afford to fix that place up.
Yeah.
Or you're getting
Sense too.
Healdsburg and Sonoma economic, like dollars.
Yeah.
Like you're getting the people driving there from the city to spend their money.
Yeah.
Right.
People are going there to spend their money. And I think Ukiah is in this place where it could be that, but we're in this
Completely.
loop.
Yeah.
And we just seem to be spinning right around, baby, right around going.
Totally. It's a chicken and egg thing.
Going
right?
super slow because I'm in escrow to buy a building in downtown Ukiah. And it's an old building. It's built in 1890, right? Last time somebody did something to it really substantial was like 1950. And I went down to the city and talked to them. And initially they're like, yeah, we want to tread lightly and help. But by the time I really got people looking at it, they're like, oh no, there's a slight slope up to the front door. So that's going to have to be pushed in to be ADA compliant, which means you're going to have to move the door in 5, which is going to trigger. And pretty soon it's like $250,000 worth of work to a building. And it's just kind of like, okay, so that's just the city having to enforce the federal and state ADA compliance laws, even though the building has been like that for 100+ years.
Right. Sometimes that's triggered by a change of use. If you're not doing the same thing in that building or you're putting more people in that building than there were previously in its previous occupation, then that creates a bigger safety hazard, right? Now there's more lives that we have to worry about in this unsprinklered building or whatever it is. But yeah, it's us enforcing state building codes, fire codes, and ADA stuff. And it does create this kind of self-perpetuating cycle, right? Because you wanted to make improvements to the building, but then when you looked into it, you found they were cost prohibitive. And so now you're not making improvements to the building, and now we're complaining about the building that's just sitting there. And it's this incredibly frustrating cycle. But you're right. Ukiah has been at that tipping point for so many years right now. And every time I think we're close, like a global pandemic happens or whatever. But we will get over that. And that will create a different kind of economy that will justify those types of improvements.
So, okay, I mean, that's true, but that's not going to happen, immediately, right? Nothing like that does. It might be 5-10 years. But realistically, like one thing they call it a like it or not podcast. So let's talk about like a lot of what we hear from the community, which is the not like it type of things they say.
Yeah.
So if I want to go and fix a building up and say, okay, I want to buy it, I want to fix it up, it needs to make all these improvements. how come that I can't work something out with the city where I fix it up in phases as I can run a business to earn income to then start to make the changes you want to see over time, as opposed to having to have it all done right, all perfect before I can open the doors and start running my business.
We've done that. Just ask us. Just talk to us about it. Absolutely. We've done phased projects often and are happy to facilitate that if that's what's going to make the project pencil or doable.
So then why am I seeing like the North State Cafe building vacant, the old pawn shop vacant, the whole block with the hotel and the building next door, like they're just all vacant. And I'm sure people are open to being like, well, if I could just, start here and start running a business, I could start doing some of these things.
Right.
I mean, if you're doing it with people, so you're saying then that that's not really what people want. Like you're offering people who own these buildings in these areas that opportunity, and they're not taking it.
Most of the buildings that are vacant for a very specific reason. There's some kind of extenuating circumstances. So, for example, the building next to the Forest Club had a big fire, and it's basically just a shell of a building. And literally anything you do to that building right now, because its value is so low, is going to trigger all of those requirements, including a seismic retrofit. And it's not just that building. That building is also connected to the Forest Club. And to do a seismic retrofit, you would have to displace the paying tenant, right? That other business. Can't do that while they're operating a bar. So it creates this chain kind of circumstances. The Palace Hotel, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But people often use Perkins Street as an example of like, look at what's happening. But what's actually happening on Perkins Street is this dramatic transformation, but it all takes time. So the amount of change you're going to see on Perkins Street in the next year, 2 years, 3 years it's an entirely new street. We've got new businesses coming in, brand new construction. Buildings are being demolished with new ones replacing it. But at the end of the day, these places are owned by private property owners. And we also respect private property owner rights. And if they want to sit on a vacant building, as long as they're not creating problems, it's not a public nuisance, they're maintaining
like
it or whatever.
Like the palace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as long as they are following the rules, the laws, there's not a lot we can do about it. And so there is this push and pull. People are demanding that we respect their private property rights, but they also want us to do something about that property over there that's been sitting vacant for 5 years. Well, that's someone else's private property rights.
Right. It's like, what do you want me to do? I don't own it.
Yeah.
And then if you take it, then you're another bad guy.
Can't win.
We talked about that. I mean, it is a precarious situation to be in, right? Where, but it does seem like the progress is just, it is happening, but it's also the wheels move slowly.
Very slowly.
Well, I also think with these empty buildings, like, it would be hard to start a business here in Ukiah with the economy so low. Is another thing.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at all these costs, you're like, what am I going to put in there that's going to return that money?
That's true. I mean, and
So that's a
that's
hard
not
thing,
just
too.
Ukiah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
if retail, food service businesses are
Sure.
struggling across the country, it's a terrible time.
Yeah. But especially in our small town, our small rural economy, it's a hard.
Well, I think that's the issue. And I think, as a city planner or whatever, I think, and not just our city, or town or whatever, but in general, we're going to really, society is changing so much in the way that it functions and works with technology that there really has to be a whole rebrand and rethought about the way we're going to use some of the buildings that have been built, because there isn't just take office spaces. Most people don't really need an office space in the way that they needed it prior to 2020.
That's right.
I run a real estate sales team. I have a big office, and it's just, you don't need it. The main reason is, with the exception of the older generation, and this is generally speaking, not for everybody, but 70 and younger, they don't want to come into your office and sit there and hand you that. They want to send it to you. They want to DocuSign it. And so commercial. Like everybody, not everybody, but so many people are buying things online, clothes, shoes, whatever. So you look at these and it's like, what are we going to do with these buildings? Tear them down or what? And to me, one of the no-brainers seems to be shift them into housing.
Right.
You know, and maybe we don't want them all in those locations, but some kind of place for people to like start turning office buildings into homes, you know, or apartments or flats or temporary week-long, you know, rentals, something besides just maybe a hotel.
Yeah.
You know, but like, or maybe not that, but something. There has to be this like really people, I think, like in positions like yours, it's like we have to really start rethinking like, what are we going to do here? Because things are changing incredibly fast, and it's only going to get worse with AI or better.
We
depending
agree
on
with
your
you.
perspective.
Yeah, and actually, our city leaders have thought that same way for a long time. In fact, you know, we talk often about the downtown zoning code and how challenging it's been for development and things like that. But its vision was really good. It was designed to streamline and facilitate the conversion of all those second stories to residential. Wouldn't that be great if we had people living all around the downtown, like constant customers for restaurants and shops and everything? It'd be perfect, right? Well, that was the vision. But then shortly after it was adopted came very, very strict fire and building codes and ADA stuff. And so now it's cost prohibitive to transform those upstairs spaces. So the vision has never actually been fully realized. And the same thing happens when you convert a commercial space to a residential space. Now you're required to have sprinklers. Now you're required. So I feel like such a negative Nancy. It's a challenge that we have to figure out how to get past. And so one of the things that we're constantly working on is figuring out how to streamline things, how to build a 72 unit apartment complex with just a building permit. Check, we did it. And we can come up with things like objective design standards and other ways to make development easier. I don't know that we'll ever be able to get around the building codes from the fire and from the state.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I think we've pretty much found the problem, which is state law, and like, you know, and that's what needs to be changed. But I say it on this podcast all the time, and then we don't need to be political here, but it's about who you're voting for and the laws that they're making. And at some point, people want to complain about it, but then they keep choosing the same leadership to make the same laws that look great on paper and make you sound like a hero for ADA and all of this that you did. And but all you did is really create a layer of bureaucracy that keeps society from functioning.
Yeah.
That's something we didn't deal with as a society 20, 30, 40 years ago in regards to being able to just bootstrap a business and get it going.
Yeah,
You know,
I feel like the pendulum has swung so far to this side now.
Right.
But communities like ours are really paying the price for it and starting to recognize that maybe there's some middle ground. Maybe we can protect the environment and protect people's health and safety, but also facilitate the development of these beautiful 100-year-old buildings that we have.
Wouldn't that be a grand idea?
Amazing, right?
A middle
I feel
ground?
like we could solve all the
Did you just
problems
say
right here.
Middle ground? What does that mean?
But how do you maintain a 100-year-old building and bring it up to code? Like, I'm in the middle of this predicament right now. It's a locally historic building that's 100 years old, but they want me to bring it up to complete and full code. It's like, which is it? Is it historical? Because the Old West Saloon isn't a smart bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, you know what I'm saying? And so it's either historical, which means there isn't an ADA compliant bathroom, historically speaking. So you know, but there's plenty of other places where somebody who needs to use an ADA compliant bathroom could go.
Sure.
Maybe we could put an ADA compliant bathroom on the corner of every city block, and anybody who needs to use the bathroom that is in a wheelchair, they could go use like the designated, you pay for it as the city. You put in an ADA compliant bathroom somewhere, and the people who own the historic building that needs to have updated plumbing and smart meters and electrical and, you know, have the floor brought down, and now you can't have any step ups in any of the bathrooms. Like, we'll just leave that because historically that's how it was.
Yeah.
And historically that worked for the community. But because one person out of 100 isn't able to access it and use it, now none of us can. And
Yeah.
that's the problem.
That's really hard, right?
And
Well, I would love to continue that conversation about that building offline because every
Yeah.
building is unique.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that we are really good we love getting creative to solve those types of problems.
Okay, I'm going to play you this tape later.
Do it.
All right?
I'm here for it.
I'll be like, Shannon, where are you? 'Tis I, Drew. Remember our conversation? I've got questions. I like it or not. I appreciate you being a good sport.
Before we get into the annexation, I just had the thought of maybe you could give us some clarity on the temporary camping something that's going on.
Well, that's in the
Do you
county.
remember that? Oh, is that county?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Never
I
mind.
mean, but that
we'll
is-
save that for somebody
that is
else.
something we could talk about, and then get into the annexation, because this is another hot button topic on Like It or Not, and is the homeless situation.
Yeah.
You know, and in California, and then in the county, and then in the city, right? And even I think I've heard, you know, some of the concerns with even annexation is like, well, look at the homeless situation in Ukiah, and it's true, it's not great. You know, I mean, it merges probably outside of the city and inside of the city, and it's probably unfair because many people experiencing homeless, to be technically correct, probably want to be where they're closest to the liquor stores and, you know, wherever their checks cashed and things like that, which I would imagine would be in the city, not camping out in the bush.
And the social services.
The social services, that's the word I was looking for. Sorry, I said liquor stores, social services.
It's a different kind of social service, but I get it.
All of it.
No, you're right. I mean, so
But it's-
we're the county seat. That's a blessing and a curse, right? So we get to have a lot of the luxuries that some of the other little towns in Mendocino County don't get to have. But what else do we have? We have the jail. We have the homeless shelter. The entire spectrum of social services, right? And so it's natural for them to congregate around the provision of those services. And so the fear that annexation, for example, would encourage homeless to go farther out into the unincorporated county is unrealistic because, like you said, the services aren't there. The liquor stores aren't there. The transportation isn't there. The things they need aren't there. They're always going to congregate around the services.
But I think the complaint or the pushback that you would get to that is that there is homeless problems in the county and in the areas that you want to annex, all right? Not you, but that the city wants to annex. And they're not great. And I have some firsthand issues with property that I'm, you know, my family owns. But so if it's already an issue there where they don't really want to be, like, and we look at like, well, the city is even worse. And that's what people think. And there are, you know, other things going on in other cities in Mendocino County that have addressed the homeless situation, like things in Fort Bragg, right? And you have the county now trying to figure out how to have some properties be used for temporary places to put people, right? But they're saying the city's not on board with that. And you guys, and I don't want to say you, let's say the city refuses to, like,
You're doing so good, Drew.
participate in the fact that there are other things going on, and all the city wants to do is keep studying it and spending money on studying where the homeless come from and where they're going to go and why they're homeless, when reality, all we want is them to be gone.
Yeah, I get that. So fun fact, all of the funding for social services, health and human services, behavioral health, substance abuse, all flows through the county of Mendocino. Their service locations happen to be in our cities, right? So the city's lane in homelessness is primarily law enforcement and cleanup crews. So when you talk about homeless in the unincorporated areas, you're probably talking about some encampments, right? And some situations like that. One of the things we've been very effective at doing in the city is preventing encampments from taking hold, right? It just doesn't happen. And so that prevents a lot of those problems. But the problem is that our law enforcement, you can't just solve homelessness with law enforcement. You can't ticket your way out of it, obviously.
Or arrest and jail.
Or arrest it. And a lot of the things that they used to be able to write tickets for are no longer, drug use on the streets and possession and all these things that people are just walking around all the time. And our cops feel like they have their hands cuffed a lot of times. So I think it's important to understand how the money flows and whose responsibility is what. You mentioned a program over in Fort Bragg. I think you're referring to the crew program over there. Mm-hmm. So we've actually been operating the same model here in the city of Ukiah in partnership with the county of Mendocino. We have mental health outreach workers who go out. We have a targeted team, and we kind of address like the frequent flyers, if you will, do kind of an all hands on deck situation where let's make sure we take care of this one person who's causing lots of problems and costing us lots of money. So that's been in place and actually really successful in the city of Ukiah for a long time. The problem is that we just have a higher population here in the city because it's a bigger city. But also there's things happening so when Fort Bragg arrests their homeless people, they come to the jail in Ukiah, and then what happens?
They stay here.
They let them out on Low Gap Road.
Well, let's bust their asses back.
Right?
Get one of them city school buses, park it out in front of the jail and say, hey, return to sender.
Return to sender. I mean, that would be amazing, but that's not what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a problem.
Can I get a job at the city? I'll take care of a lot of these issues.
Yes.
You just hire me and give me a couple buses, and we'll just see.
You can use the old top shelf bus, dude.
Yes, there you go. Give me a couple bags of canned food and some lighters, and I'll take care of it.
You're hired.
Well, I think it's good to hear like the actual part of it, because part of what I wanted to have in this conversation is just give you an opportunity to address what you hear so many people say about Ukiah and the city and what's going on. And you guys pay yourselves fat salaries and do nothing and all of these types of things, right?
Right. For sure.
I mean, I'm just being honest here. And so, but I think it's a complex situation that a lot of people don't understand. And it's easy to sit here on a podcast and make jokes about, how rough the streets in Ukiah have become. But like Carter and I, we love it here. We grew up here and we want it to thrive and be better. And so I think these kind of conversations, kind of help move it forward.
Yeah. Well, we do too. I mean, this is our home too.
Right.
Right. It's such an interesting community because, we have this population, according to the signs, of 16,000 people. But every single day, the population of Ukiah swells to about 50,000 people. That's who we're serving on a daily basis. It's huge. And I've been thinking a lot about this, like what you said, like why are people so mad at the city of Ukiah? Mm-hmm. And I come from a background of customer service almost my whole life. Every job I've had, I've considered some aspect of customer service. And I think the city of Ukiah does more than most cities our size, right? We do water, sewer, electric. We have an airport, we do police, we do fire, we do recreation plant, we do all the things. And so we're pretty much in your face all the time, right? And that's a lot of touch points for the community. And we're not going to get it right every single time. But if you've ever worked in customer service, you know that a bad story travels so much faster than a good story, right? A bad Yelp review will take you down. And
especially
I feel
these days with social media.
Totally. And I feel like we're feeling some of that right now, but it's because we're out there doing so many things all the time.
Yeah, I mean the complaint is like, okay, are they managing things properly?
Yeah.
Like, are we running a deficit, and where does our money come from, and where is it going?
You should always ask those questions of your government.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. So what is the state of like the Ukiah budget? Or do we run a deficit, or
No.
where's that at? Aren't we isn't there something like we're like $16 million in debt or something like that in a deficit?
No, we're not.
That's fake news?
That's fake news.
Okay.
So the city operates on a balanced budget every year. We've got healthy reserves.
And is that because the state has to come and help with that, or is that just from running the numbers?
The state has never been involved in our budget.
Okay.
No.
Good.
We operate within our means. That's what we do. And so as COVID happened and the economy started to decline and everything, our sales tax revenue has gone down. Sales tax makes up the biggest portion of our general fund. That's how we pay for cops and firefighters and recreation programs and all those things. We've lost in the last few years about $2.6 million per year, and that's a big chunk of change for our budget. So we do things differently. We cut where we can, and we streamline, and we freeze positions if we have to, but we operate within our means, and we operate on a balanced budget. So one of the things you might be hearing out there is about debt, right? Does the city have debt? Absolutely. We do all those things I just said. We operate a wastewater treatment plant, a water treatment plant, a recycled water system, an airport. You can't do those things. You can't do capital improvement projects of that size without taking out a loan, right? But I will say that all of the debt that we have was proactive and strategic, right? It wasn't like a last-ditch situation. For example, we bonded to buy down our future pension debt, which is drowning cities in California right now. Interest rates were low. We had an opportunity to take a huge chunk out of that. And as a result, we're in a much better financial position. It shows up on our books as debt. That was debt that we always had. It just looks different now.
But you're saying paying pensions from past government, Ukiah government city employees is a big part of where a lot of the current money that we have, that Ukiah has, is going towards?
Oh, and that's just one example of strategic debt. Pensions are real. Most public agencies have pension plans, right? So that's something that we do. But also, we've built these giant water and sewer treatment facilities and then upgraded them to meet state requirements. We're subject to it too, not just real estate agents and property
Shit
owners.
runs downhill, though. We all know how that goes.
So we've bonded to do these types of projects.
Got it. Well, that makes sense too. You know, you got to spend money to make money, right?
Yeah.
So the city then is in debt. So which is most, I mean, America's in debt, right?
Well, if you have a mortgage on your home,
everybody's in debt.
Yeah.
So
But if you
what
can
is the
pay
city
it,
debt?
if you can handle that debt payment, then that's responsible,
works.
right? You've got your house, you're making your payments, life is good.
Okay, so let's be honest then. We're losing tax revenue because the economy is down. And now we're talking about the city making a move to annex some of the county property into the city limits.
Yeah.
And now, why now? Is that the city? Is that because we're running out of money in the county or the city, and we're trying to pull some dollars in?
We just got a wild hair one night. We decided
You guys
to
were
get
just
people all riled
drinking
up.
40s in the back room.
I know this is new
God
news.
damn it, Sage. What the heck, dude? Come on.
Yeah, let's look at it. Bring it up. We're high tech here, like it or
Oh,
not.
look at you.
So we can check this
It's
out.
like you had that ready.
Oh yeah, we got a few things ready here.
So I know this is new to a lot of people, but this has actually been talked about for literally decades now. We've been talking about annexation. And so there's a number of things, and I won't get into all the bureaucratic stuff, but there's all these boxes and plans and things you have to check off in order to even be able to apply for annexation. And so over the last few years, in addition to, years of talking about it, we've been checking those boxes. The last major box was last year when all of the cities in the county and the county agreed to a master tax sharing agreement. And that was the last thing that we had to do before we could technically file an application for annexation.
Yeah.
So talk about that. That was interesting. I talked to Jake about that yesterday.
Yeah. About the tax sharing agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime a jurisdiction is taking over part of another jurisdiction and there's revenue associated with it, there almost always is. There might be sales tax, there's property tax, there might be transient occupancy tax from hotels. It's incumbent upon those agencies to come up with a fair agreement how to share those revenues, right? And so some agreements are very, very simple. The one that we actually have here is one of the more complicated ones that we've actually seen, and honestly more generous to the county. Instead of just sharing property tax revenue, we're also sharing sales tax, TOT, and something else that I'm totally blanking on right now. But what it does is it allows the agencies to shift their provision of services over a period of time and scale that revenue shift, right? So there's no like huge impact all at once. So this agreement is designed to scale over a period of 15 years or more. So sales tax, for example, from the annexed area would in year 1 go all to the county still. Year 2, we would get 1/15 of it, and that continues until we get the entire portion of sales tax.
Can you,
Right. So
can you
you're
bring
not-
up that link I sent you that wasn't hyperlinked, but put it in the
So
not that one.
if the annexation
that black
goes
one on the
through,
bottom.
you're not taking away all this money from the county
No.
like immediately, right? Is what you're saying. It's
Right.
over a 15-year period of like transition.
Exactly. It's a
transition plan.
very extended transition period. In fact, for the county, their general fund, their largest portion of general fund revenue comes from property tax. It's less significant for cities. They get property tax. Through annexation, the county loses 0 of the property tax that they're currently getting right now. What we're actually sharing is just a percentage of the amount that the property tax would increase each year. But that base amount that they've been getting all this time doesn't change at all.
Yeah. So
they
they're
don't-
on board.
So they don't lose anything.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting statement.
No, they're not on board.
They were on board.
I'm trying to have him bring it up
they
right now.
were on board.
Just hyperlink that and bring it up. You don't need all that other white space. Yeah, there you go. So it's on tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
The agenda for the tax revenue sharing, and it looks like they're on the board to basically repeal it or deny it or get rid of it or whatever the case may be.
So the item was placed on the agenda by one supervisor who is suggesting that we terminate the tax sharing agreement.
Is that
And how
Ted
long did-
Williams?
Supervisor Williams.
How long did it take to agree to this?
Well, honestly, a tax sharing agreement has been negotiated for literally decades between the city and the county.
And now
the most
we're about
recent
ready to
version-
execute it, and
yeah.
somebody-
No, it's already executed. It's inked. There's a 5-year termination clause. And this was between all of the cities. We had independent legal counsel, we had independent financial consultants, and the whole bit. This specific agreement was negotiated over a period of many, many months.
So the complaint, though, is that when they agreed to it, they being the Board of Supervisors, because it wasn't, let's make it clear for the people listening, it wasn't the current Board of Supervisors that agreed to it. It was the ones previous to this. And they agreed to it thinking that annexation of the scale that the city is proposing now would have taken place over a much longer period of time, and that you guys are going, the city's going for a lot fast, and that it was never intended under this agreement to be used for this month's annexation this fast.
Well, we haven't heard that directly from the county, to be clear.
You have it.
And the tax sharing agreement, if you actually look at the document, has 2 exhibits. And one exhibit is a map of Fort Bragg, and one is a map of the Ukiah Valley. And the reason those maps are attached is because we wanted to make sure that jurisdictions weren't cherry picking high revenue areas. Like, I'm only going to annex the Rayleigh's Shopping Center and Thurston Auto Plaza, right? I'm going to leave everything else behind. That was never our intention anyway. But the county insisted on a provision that if you annex the higher revenue areas, for example, in Ukiah to the north, then you also have to annex a proportionate share of the lower revenue generating areas to the south. And so the map on the exhibit of the tax sharing agreement actually looks a lot like the map you just put up there, because it's based on the
got it
boundaries of the water districts.
So that's where this map came from.
Yeah.
How come very little of it goes over the east, over to the river, to the eastern hills?
Well, a couple
There's-
reasons.
That's a lot of water district land there.
It is, yeah. Some of that is Regina, which is a private water district, not
Okay.
a public district. But you're right, part of it is in the Millview Water District. A couple things. We heard a lot of feedback early on from people over in that area who said, we don't want any part of this. And, so we've continued to look at it to see about adjusting the boundaries. And then secondly, on the east side of the river is what's called state responsibility area for CAL FIRE. Even though the Ukiah Valley Fire Authority services this entire valley, including east of the river, technically If a fire occurs on the east side of the river and those air attack bombers come, they could send us a bill if that's city limits. Right now, that would be a state bill, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a liability issue
Give it to
there.
the state.
There's a liability. Yeah, give it to the state, exactly. And also, part of this proposal requires us to evaluate our provision of services. How are we going to provide streets over there? What's a lot of windy, hilly streets that haven't been maintained in a long time over here that are kind of outside of our area of expertise, right? We do city streets. Public safety might have communication issues in some of these. So there were a number of factors where it just didn't make sense.
So one of the main, I think, pushbacks that you're getting, because, I listen to what, the birds and the bees be whispering in the trees, is that this is basically a death sentence for the county. That this is going to take the tax revenue that they desperately need, because they're already behind the 8 ball, including the sheriff coming out and saying he's against annexation because, it's probably going to take a lot of the money that he gets. And is this a move because the city's just looking out for what it needs in the future? And what would the impact be if it did end up being something that put the county down? I mean, there's a lot of people really concerned that the city's gonna vacuum up all the good tax revenue that the county gets, and the county's gonna go broke.
Right. We're definitely hearing that. That's a thing that people are saying. We don't want that. We need a strong county, right? We need both agencies to be able to function, to thrive in their lane, to use the resources that they get for their specialized services and to do it well. And so right now, we have urbanized areas that are in the unincorporated county that are not really receiving adequate city services. There's neighborhoods where one side of the street has water in a drought and one side of the street doesn't. Neighborhoods in Ukiah that have 0 parks or playgrounds for the kids because they've been allowed to develop without the city services. And so it's not a money grab. It's not a power grab. You said it earlier. We're Ukiahans. We all, our zip code, our address all says Ukiah. And so when people says, where do you live? You don't say Ukiah, but not in the city limits. I live outside the city limits, right? That's not a distinction that most people make. And I get that there are people who say, I want to live a country life, right? Or I want to live a city life.
Yeah.
I get that.
The chickens.
The chickens.
You're going to take away all the chickens.
Yes.
I hear that one.
Oh my goodness.
Are you taking away chickens, Shannon?
Oh my goodness, the chickens. So here's the thing.
Can you have chicken in the city limits, Shannon?
Yes, you can.
How many chickens can I have?
I'm not a planner, but I can tell you can have chickens. And also, if you live out in the county and you get annexed, you can keep all your chickens. If you can legally do what you're doing out in the county, keep doing it. Just you do you.
So why?
So why are people so mad? Yeah, so here's the thing. People say, well, how is it going to benefit me instantly? And that's a hard question to answer because that's not really what annexation is about. You're not going to get a check for $5,000 in your mail just because you became a city resident, right? That's not a thing, right? And that's not what annexation is about.
Come on, let me get some of that Elon money, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me get that Doge check.
We're not making those promises. But what annexation does do is allow for the more streamlined and effective provision of government services.
So
the proper alignment of funding and allocation of resources and services.
Why does this is just like a simple question. Why
Yeah.
does the city want to annex all this land right now?
The boundaries that you're looking at are the water district boundaries. All right. So this started with the consolidation of water districts. So up on the north is Millview Water District, and down on the south is Willow Water District. Those are the water district boundaries. So the conversation started as we consolidated these water districts because they were in difficult situations, and there's state grant money that we can help use to provide better infrastructure and better water. So that's a thing that's already happening. And the water districts, through our conversations, were totally on board, in fact, asking us to annex us so that we can go away. This is a special district that if you're all providing water to us, doesn't need to exist anymore. So annex all of us. So we said, all right, well, it's already in our sphere of influence, and it's in this area that the county already agreed to. So, okay, this is what the map looks like. That's the only reason it looks like that.
So now that is no longer going to be Millview. It's going to be City of Ukiah Water.
Well, it's currently it's Millview, and it's Ukiah Valley Water Authority, which includes actually Redwood Valley and Calpella and Willow.
Okay. So that makes sense because we've always had this discussion about water. Now, what about sewer, right? Can you have a septic system in the city of Ukiah?
We do a septic system. No, I don't think we do have any, but annexation doesn't change any of that. So if you have a well, keep your well. If you're not connected to water or sewer, keep it that way. The annexation doesn't change any of that.
But that's what's confusing to me. How come then if I'm in the city of Ukiah, but I can have a well and a septic and chickens and horses, but you're in the city of Ukiah, you can't because neener, I got annexed and you didn't, so I get all of these luxuries that you don't? Like, how does that work? That just seems to me like it's going to be like hard to decipher who's allowed to do what. And I think that's part of the problem, right? The city has such strict rules about what you can do, whether it be for cannabis, whether it be where you would allow, dispensaries or whatever. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, we want to kind of spread out, take some water. So we're going to I know we have these rules, but for you guys who aren't part of these rules, like you can keep your, you can keep your horses. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I do. Well, and
how are you going to work that out?
That's the result of annexation being stalled for so many decades. Is that essentially what our city neighborhoods have sprung up outside the city limits, and different rules apply, and that's true today, and that would be true in the future with annexation, with the exception of the fact that we think we can do a better job of fixing streets. We think we can do a better job of providing consistent public safety. And a lot of these other things. We're already providing a lot of these services, recreation services, to the entire, county practically.
So here's another concern, because I'm a real estate agent and investor, and have been in real estate. And my family owns property, and I own property in both the city and the county. And so I've had the luxury or experience of dealing with the city planning and building and the county planning and building, dealing with the sheriffs and dealing with the police, dealing with Millview Water District, dealing with city. And I think that when you go to the city and you talk to them, there's like, if you have a question, send us an email and we'll get back to you in 3 days. And I think the concern is like, how is the city going to be able to handle all of this extra responsibility to keep things moving that, to be quite honest, it's struggling to do right now? I mean, I'm just got to be frank. It's not functioning at a level where it seems like it can handle tripling in size without it significantly bogging down growth. It's hard enough dealing with the county, but like now all of a sudden I got bare land. I want to get a septic system, perked and put in and all these rules. And now I'm going to go to City Hall to get that done. And they don't even have any septics in the city limits right now. And so it just seems to me like you're biting off a big old hunk that you might not like the taste of when you get it, because, and you're not going to be able to spit it out.
Well, a couple things. I mean, so when you look at this map, it is geographically speaking about triple the size, because the city of Ukiah is only about 5 square miles. Okay. But that doesn't mean you're tripling the population or the density, because as you pointed out, a lot of those are larger parcels and very sparse, right? And so the city stuff seems, is most likely to happen in the downtown part of the, the core of the city. So that's not going to change. We know where the highest call volumes are for both the police and the sheriff already. The highest call volumes in the entire county, from what the sheriff says, are just outside our city limits. It's, Brush Street, it's Laws Avenue. And those are areas where we think we can provide more consistent service. But part of the problem is that it's right on the city limits. And so you got people bouncing back and forth. I can get away with this here, but not here, and vice versa. So that's a thing that happens. But also I want to say that this is the map that we started with, all right? So obviously we've been getting some feedback. And so we are having conversations with the water districts and others and saying like, well, okay, this doesn't seem to resonate well with people. So what can we do differently? So we are exploring other alternatives. That's part of the process. And at the end of the day, we have to put together an application for LAFCO with a plan for services that literally specifies how we're going to provide, how we're going to pay for, how we're going to deliver every single service that we that we provide to this annexed area. And at the end of the day, if we can't do that effectively, then LAFCO's not going to approve our application.
So but I'm still confused. Like, how are you going to, so if I own a property on this map that's set for annexation. Okay.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to decipher, like when I call the city, they're going to look and they go, oh, you were in the annexed area. So we know that that's the old county rules and everything stays the same for you there. And that's kind of what you guys are planning to do, is just
That's right.
keep it the same and say, okay, it's the same rules that apply in the county, but now it's city limits in these areas, which you're allowed to do because they're outside of the original core 5 miles or whatever. That's the plan.
Correct. Yeah, we're proposing to just keep whatever zoning and land use is existing in the county would be adopted as city.
But the permitting fees and the cost for everything would be, like you hear a lot about business licenses, right? And how it's a flat fee in the county. And then that's all still, but it's a percentage of gross receipts or maybe in city. So is that stuff going to stay the same too? Or are we going to be brought into that layer of like, well, you now are part of the city, so you got to pay the way the city pays, and that $16 million in debt is now your debt, and we're going to, we need a little bit of we need some crumbs to help.
Sure. Well, we're managing that debt service on our current boundaries and current revenue already, right? So it doesn't make any sense to extend that to new residents. That's not how we do it anyway. But let's talk about business licenses for a second. So the way the city handles business licenses is very, very common amongst jurisdictions. It's based either on employees or gross receipts, things like that. So, and they have not been increased in decades. It was voted on by the voters originally, and that's how we got them. Most businesses in Ukiah are paying business license fees of about $100 or $200. And so there's some numbers floating around on social media. I know, it's all true because it's out there.
Yeah.
That,
I seen it on Facebook.
I read it.
One small business's business license fees are going to be increased by over 1,200%. And that is true in a hypothetical example for a business that is grossing over $20 million a year. So if a business that's grossing over $20 million a year has to pay $5,000 in a business license fee that helps pay for police and fire and parks and recreation and all the things that make that community livable for their employees and attractive for their business, that seems like a pretty decent deal. But that being said, we don't have a lot of those types of businesses in our current city limits. So as we expand our reach, if we were to pick up businesses that are grossing $200, $300 million a year, then we're going to take a look at that and figure out something that's fair. All right. But that's the system that we use now, and it's worked really well. And that's what other cities use too.
So that brings me to my next thing I'd like.
We're
talking about the rumor mill here.
Yeah. I love it.
Like, the reason I'm asked, like, why now is because there is rumors that Amazon wants to bring, a facility to where Masonite used to be. And I don't know if that's true, but that's what you're hearing. And so, are we doing this to, like, I don't really care. I think we need to attract business and figure out how to make it work. But is that the play? Like, are we going to be able to take this district in the city and then bring in businesses that can do 20 million and get some money going here? Like, is that even a thing that's going on? Like,
the proposed facility is a delivery center.
Amazon delivery center.
It's an Amazon delivery center, which generates zero sales tax revenue.
Zero sales
for the
tax.
county or the city. Doesn't matter where it's located.
Okay.
So what I would want to ask.
And you started this plan how many years ago?
For
the talk for annexation.
Decades ago. Yeah. And this is a very new project. Generates zero sales tax revenue. So what I would be asking from a city planning perspective, as you spoke to, is how is this going to affect our community negatively or positively? I'm going to look at traffic impacts, for example. That's a lot of trucks coming in and out.
Yep.
Do they have safe ingress and egress? What is that going to do to our on-ramps,
Not only-
oncoming traffic,
Not
et
on
cetera,
that
et
North
cetera?
State Street exit on ramp. That thing's hot and quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
it
would
is.
need
It's
some work.
super dangerous.
Yeah.
So those are the types of questions I'd want to be looking at.
Yeah.
But we're not. It's just not generating any revenue.
Yeah, but
There's
they're
no
going to
win
use
here.
probably a ton of power and a ton of water. And if I was the city, I'd be wanting to sell them some nice, expensive power and water.
Well, it's just a warehouse, so I don't know about that. And
Yeah.
and I will also, to be clear, we are not annexing for the purpose of providing electric service. A lot of people would like us to. We get requests all the time because
Yeah,
our
that
rates
was-
are like 30% cheaper than
Yeah.
PG&E.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, this is with the silver lining here, people.
Right, I know, but those are PG&E customers, and obviously PG&E is not going to give them over, right? Those are paying.
We're gonna refuse.
I'm
Refuse
sorry,
to
I'm
pay.
annexing
Yeah.
to the city, PG&E.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Okay, so
I refuse to pay PG&E.
But
and
what
then-
it does do is it opens up the possibility for that later. Right now, if
Yeah.
you live outside the city limits, there's no chance of you getting city of Ukiah power.
Yeah.
But if there's annexation, then maybe someday we'll explore that. But that's separate.
I mean,
What I was talking with Jake. Him and I work together on the Sundays in the Park
Yeah.
concert series, and he, from his perspective, he was like, "We already the rec department, especially, already serves so much of the Ukiah population, also Calpella, Redwood Valley, and they don't charge any different."
You're not paying a
Based
non-resident
on
fee.
being a non-resident, right?
Right.
So he was like, we already service like all of these kids, all of these people, for these things. So from that perspective, it made a lot of sense to him.
Yeah.
Of like,
So 2 weeks ago, you're an expert on the concerts in the park, right?
Yeah.
There were over 5,000 people. At
Yeah, we
that
played
concert
that
in-
show.
That's a whole town.
Yeah, that was top shelf.
I know.
we
you were
opened that
there.
show, you know.
You guys brought over
Yeah.
5,000 people to Todd Grove Park. That's incredible.
We helped.
Yeah.
We helped.
But Jake's right. I mean, we already provide those services, just like we already provide water and emergency services and fire to this greater area, because we've always seen this entire valley as our community. That doesn't mean that every single person in the valley needs to be a city resident.
Right.
But it does make sense to have more streamlined government, and it makes sense for those folks who live just outside the city limits to be able to vote on matters that affect them, on city council members and things like that. Right now, they're not
Yeah.
being represented.
Sure. That makes sense too.
It seems to me that development is slighted for this northern area. I mean, it's just, you can see it in the way they're redoing State Street, some of the buildings that are getting removed around the corner of Lake Mendocino Drive in State, them putting in that new road over to Redemeyer, the possibility of a distribution center from, Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And, the other big elephant in the room here is like housing, and really the need for not just single family residents, but high end. This is for all the people out there, not low income housing, right? For
Yeah.
people that just want to rent a regular, nice place to live.
Yeah.
For, $2,000 or less a month. And, it seems like this area is either secretly or not so secretly, like looking down the barrel of like having some major development, which makes sense in my opinion.
Well, there are a couple housing developments that have been in the pipeline for a long time.
Correct.
You've probably heard about them. One in the Lovers Lane area, and then one on the south end of town near Highway 253. And they've stalled for various reasons: lack of water, lack of infrastructure.
Well, that's what I was
primarily.
going with
They can't
this.
get them through.
Right. And
You know who they're calling to ask for help?
who?
They're calling the city.
The city of Ukiah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, will this annexation help streamline those types of housing projects in regards to sewer and water?
Yes. Can we provide those services? Absolutely. Do we have enough water? Yes, absolutely.
You have enough
And in fact,
sewer
if it's-
capacity to handle like another.
Shit.
Absolutely.
Handle all the shit.
Handle all the shit. Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially with the addition of the recycled water project.
Yeah. That's the
Completely.
purple pipe.
That's the purple pipe. Yeah.
Purple
Comes
pipe
online in the
project.
next few months. And so then we're going to be using recycled water to water almost every city park, the golf course, the cemetery.
I heard you guys
the
were cutting
schools.
off the water to the golf course. Is that fake news also?
Oh, it's fake news. So much
Are you
fake
sure?
news.
You're just buttering me up. Tell me what I want to hear.
No, no,
If
no.
I have a
Fake
drive.
news everywhere, dude.
I want to see a green, lush, purple pipe watered golf course all year long.
What we do have at some facilities is a dual system because we are using recycled water on so much. Unless we can build all these new homes, we may not have enough recycled water at the end of the summer to continue using that on all the turf.
there
So
you
they're
go.
dual plumbed so that then we just switch it over and we can keep your golf course nice and green.
There you go. I don't even golf that much, but I hate a brown golf course. It's just annoying. The golf course has got to be green.
They should be green.
They should be.
Yeah.
It's a city. It
Yeah.
should be the city jewel, and it's a nice golf course.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
so the city, we don't build housing ourselves.
Right.
But we can streamline it. We
No.
can facilitate it 100%. And you talked earlier about sprawl and smart growth and communities that are well planned. Well, if residential housing is, because we're not changing the zoning in these county areas, if it's allowed there, then it can be facilitated there. We can do that. But look at, there's a 3-story hotel out at the Forks. Does that make any sense at all? That's not smart development. It's crazy.
Right next to a hair salon.
Yes.
And that hair salon, we need to put a road where that hair salon is. So now what are we going to do?
It does not seem like a lot of thought was put into that.
Well, no, I don't disagree with you. And I think it's hodgepodge, but
It is right off the freeway. That's one
yeah.
thing.
It's a 3-story building out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I just think, like I said, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And people ask me, are you for the annexation? And to be honest, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of reasons why it makes sense, and you're outlining them, and you're very eloquent, and, but the other side is, we're
What
talking.
is it? What is the other side?
Well, the other side is that people are used to living a specific lifestyle in Ukiah, and there's people who don't live in the city for a reason. They don't want to be in the city. They like well water. They like septics. They like.
Well, she's saying they're not
you
changing
can
any
keep
of
all
that.
of that.
For sure, you say that, right? And I'm not saying
Oh.
you can't. I'm devil's advocate here, right? Like it or not. But the question is, because I think if you can answer these articulately, did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, then I think you'll get more people on your side.
Yeah.
I think the problem is you have people that don't necessarily don't want it, but the problem is when they awake at night in their bed and they go, well, what about, and they can't get answers, and they go to the city, Q&A, and they don't get their questions answered, and they feel like it was, like a timeshare presentation, right? That it fuels this thing where it's it comes down to logistics. Okay, I want to put in a well. The city's never really permitted a well, knows anything about a well. How are we actually going to be okay, you can still put a well in, and we're going to be able to handle it? People, I think, are genuinely concerned that everything is going to bottleneck because the city is taking on problems that they're not problems, but issues that they're not dealt with, not equipped to deal with, and you're not even going to know is an issue until it's an issue. And you may say, we've thought of it all, and you may have. But the problem is, realistically, how is city folk going to take care of country problems? You know what I mean? And that's something you guys got to, figure out how to articulate to people. Because I think if you can bridge that gap, you'll have a lot more people being like, let's do it. Because there is a lot of dysfunction between the two. And I think the other thing what's that?
Go ahead.
I think the other thing that people are really concerned about is what's going to happen to the county, after this. And I think those are two big questions that, don't get answered.
Well, I guess I'm gonna work backwards here. So we would not have proposed or agreed to an agreement that we thought was going to hurt the county financially, right? Because we don't want that. There's important services. The county does health and human services, for crying out loud. We need those. In fact, we need even more of those, speaking to the homeless problem. And so we don't want to do anything that hurts the county. And it's important to recognize that it's not just revenues that are shifting, it's the provision of services that are also shifting. And so when we say, hey, county, we're going to take streets off your hands in this area, that's a tremendous savings to the county. For example, in 2019, the county published a 20-year plan for street improvement across the entire county of 3,500 miles. And so just in the proposed annexation area, in the next 10 years, there are roughly $15 million worth of projects that the county is planning to do. Those are no longer their responsibilities. Look at that, Drew. We just saved them $15 million.
Yeah, but look at the
But
city
we're not talking
streets.
about that. Oh, you want to talk about Gobi? We're
Look at
fixing- we're
Gobi. Goddamn, I saw,
paving it. I
I saw
know.
a Chinese guy in a bottle.
You got to break some eggs to make an omelet. We're breaking a lot of eggs right now, but we're also making omelets.
Yeah.
And we're fixing them. So, and we believe we have the capacity to do that. So one of the things that an annexation does is it allows us to apply 2 special sales taxes that we have to the additional areas. If you're shopping at Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, you're already paying that. You're paying that almost everywhere you do business already. It's a 0.5% for public safety, police and fire, and 0.5% for streets. So that means we automatically have dedicated funding to extend those resources. And even better, with the streets money, that allows us to leverage additional funding from Caltrans and other grants. You're making this much money? Oh, good. You're entitled to this much now. So there's a
So
multiplier
you get more
effect
in the pot to fix the streets.
to fix the streets. So we get the resources. So how are you going to upstaff police? Well, we're going to get additional revenue for that, and we're already planning on it. So
So how many more police will you need to hire?
it depends on the boundaries. We don't know what the final
Well,
boundaries
if that
will be.
one got approved.
If the original proposed boundaries, then the police department is asking for an additional 2 people, which is interesting. So at any given time, the sheriff only has 1 or 2 people in the entire Inland District, and that stretches all the way from Lake County to Boonville, Ridgewood Grade to the Sonoma County border. 1 or 2 sheriff's deputies in that entire region, right? So at any given time, we'll have far more officers on the streets in the Ukiah area than is
great.
currently existing. So be a law-abiding citizen,
Just
Carter.
kidding. I'm not like
That's
that
what we need,
anymore.
more cops. I was hoping
I'm
it was
not
0.
like
Yeah.
that anymore, folks.
Yes, know your audience. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
I don't know if we do.
Lots more cops.
Okay, but you asked like a million questions, and I wasn't taking notes, but I'm going to try to go back. And so, how is the city going to process a septic tank application? Well, we're not. I'm pretty sure those go through environmental health, and they're going to continue to. Right.
What about
You're
wells?
right. We don't do those, and we don't. And wells go through, I think, the state water board or something. You're right. We don't do those, and we won't. We don't have to. Those are somebody else's services.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I missed a bunch of questions. You asked a lot. Do you remember any? What else am I missing?
Well, I just think, we can get into the specifics, but I just think in general, people, and we talked about it at the beginning of this, people want to function in the city or the county where they're at, and they don't want their quality or day-to-day life to change or at least be impacted negatively, right? Whether that be
Yeah.
money or whatever.
And I think we can do that. So when people say that to me, what I ask them is, well, tell me then, how do you interact with your government currently?
Yeah, as
So if
little
you
as
live out in the
possible would
county-
be the answer
Yeah.
to that question.
So why would that change, right? We're not coming after you. Nothing is changing.
Yeah, well, but I think that's what scares people.
Yeah,
because
for
in
sure.
the city, you got there's more rules. You know what I mean? There is more rules in the city than there is in the county as far as what you can and can't do. And I think,
But doesn't that make sense? Because we're living
does.
in close quarters,
But
right?
but now you're
Do you
wanting-
want your next door neighbor, when you live 5 feet away from somebody, to have 2 donkeys?
absolutely not.
No.
But now you're taking and putting those county people that are used to living that way in the city.
But we're leaving the rules the same.
Well, I just think that giving you the opportunity to address it, because I think people don't believe you.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I know, yeah.
And that's all I'm getting at here is that I think if people did believe you, then what is the problem? Is kind of where it's
So
at.
what
I
we're
think there's a
saying-
lot of misinformation too.
Completely.
Like people just assuming that this is how it's going to go, which is
Yeah.
why we want to have you on so you can clarify this shit, because
Totally.
a lot of people assume, or they see one headline like we talked about before, one little thing, and they're like, oh, immediate judgment. It's just kind of how we are these days, right?
Absolutely.
We see one thing and we think that it's true, and we make up the story in our head of how it's going to be, and then we type out what we think.
Absolutely.
Right? Like that's
Yeah.
the process that
And
happens
someone affirms that, right? Someone gives us a thumbs up. It doesn't matter what BS we just spouted. I know.
It's a fear-based reaction instead of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And this is why I was telling you guys earlier. I wish more people would approach things from a perspective of curiosity. Like, oh, annexation, what does that mean? Can you tell me more about that? Educate me. But you're right. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So yes, what we're telling people is we are adopting, or we would adopt, the same zoning and land use rules that are in the county. And I understand why people would be skeptical of that. But it is no easy feat to change zoning. That's A, why we're not trying to do it now, and B, why it requires an entire public process. So if in the future someone decided that it would be a good idea to put housing somewhere where there is currently something else and it's not zoned properly for that, there is a whole
Ag land.
dang process for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like ag land, for example.
That's going to come up sooner than later. A lot of people haven't been able to sell grapes, and that industry is changing rapidly, and a lot of people are stuck with ag land.
I suspect we'll be hearing from people who own ag land who say, how can I change the zoning?
Rezone, yes.
That's going to come from them, not from us.
Right.
But that's my point. Like, that's what I wanted to get at here, is not just henpeck at you, but it's, we got to have to rethink this whole Ukiah Valley situation, because all of our lives are changing. Cannabis has changed. The grape industry has changed. And we used to make a living farming, and that really isn't a viable way of living. And we live in a community where farmland is all around us.
Yeah.
And on your way here, you saw what they're farming now.
Solar.
Sunlight.
Yeah.
So, okay, is that what it is? Where is that going to go? I think another big question for the city, right, is what are you going to do with cannabis and legal cannabis licenses that are licensed in the county that you're going to be absorbing?
They're grandfathered in.
So they're going to stay there.
Absolutely.
And so are you going to just do the county ordinances, or you're going to come up with something better, because the county one's no good?
Well, we agree that it's been problematic. So, and I'm not the expert here, so I'm
Sure.
not going to go deep into this at all. But that is actually the one area of zoning that we are not proposing to keep the same. So existing businesses would be grandfathered in. New ones would be brought in under the city's process, which is actually much easier to get through. We do not apply a cannabis tax to those businesses. There's no special tax. And so there would be a use permit. So if somebody wanted to grow or open a dispensary or whatever, then there would be a discretionary process, because it's only fair to make sure that the people around that place understand what's happening and that it's appropriate for that site.
So if I had ag land that's being annexed and I didn't have a cannabis permit, I wouldn't be able to just go apply for one like I could now with the county because of the zoning. I'd have to go and get a minor use permit through the city and see if it would be allowable.
Not necessarily if it's ag land, and that depends. Again, I'm not the expert here, but if it's an allowed ag crop, which it is in California, then whatever rules apply to other traditional agriculture would apply.
Yeah, it's so interesting, being in real estate and, and watching how the cannabis market has negatively impacted the real estate values in our county.
Interesting. Yeah.
And how that's going to affect, like you said, the county makes most of its money through property taxes.
That's right.
Well, they have, the black pearl out in the fog lurking in that. They're going to, it's a problem. And I've been speaking up about the short-sightedness of, I think, leadership at the county and maybe in the city too, but you're kind of in the city's in its own little bubble. But that so much of what fed the economy in Ukiah secondarily was the cannabis market. And that is going away, and there's an opportunity for it to be saved. Maybe not to where it was, and maybe it wasn't healthy before. I agree that it wasn't. You know what I mean? It's not like we want to do that. But we have to be honest about realistically what can we do with the resources that we have and the reputation that we got. And cannabis is something that could become, and you hear it also, it's kind of played out. I don't even like saying it, like I'm almost like, but it's like, it could be some kind of destination, tourist
Sure.
type of thing. You could take a lot of this land and allow people in certain spaces to grow acres industrially, indoor, all of these different things. And it could provide so much money to put a peg in the free fall of the tax dollars and revenue that's coming in to the county and the city. Like,
We could, Drew, but there's not enough bare land in the city limits to allow it.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. So, okay, as a part of getting people on board for
Yeah.
annexation, like start thinking big, think
We are.
differently.
We are.
And I think the county needs to get that message, and you're going to always have, the Karens that want to come down and scream at the meetings, because they moved here from Berkeley in the 70s and grew pot illegally and sold it for, $15,000 a pound. But now that people are trying to make a living legally, they don't want to look at it anymore because they've moved on. And it's just, it's the truth.
Listen, wherever you fall on the issue,
It's
it's
short-
legal. It's legal. And so I agree, we have an opportunity to embrace it. And we do have some industry leaders in the city of Ukiah who, given the opportunity to expand even more, I think would embrace that.
Totally. And there's industry leaders in this county.
Yes.
They're local people who could really
They're
build.
struggling.
Yeah, but they have the opportunity to be the Barras and the Fetzers and create a brand of something that could be good for this city and this county, if instead of being looked at like the people that were, always stunk up the room smoking weed, were actually the future entrepreneurs of and saving agriculture here. That's it. It could save a large portion of the agricultural business, the farming business, fill up the houses, all, you see stores like, Spare Time or Big Daddy's or,
We strongly believe in the preservation of agriculture, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be grapes, but we passed a right to farm ordinance a year or more ago. It was embraced by the Farm Bureau at the time, and but that's what it's about. Is we were thinking ahead about the possible expansion of our boundaries and wanting to make sure that that was still part of our heritage.
it's smart.
But it doesn't have to be grapes. You're right.
And it doesn't have
grapes.
to be cannabis.
It doesn't?
But
Gotta be
cannabis,
something.
cannabis is on a short leash, and
For sure.
it's been handcuffed and it doesn't make sense why, when it's obvious that the impact it's having on our community is so prevalent. We're like, no one's spending money in restaurants and nobody's buying cars and there's not enough jobs, and it's like, okay, well, what's changed? How can we used to be able to do that?
Pretty
obvious.
We were the leaders in this industry. How did we get so far left behind in
Right.
it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like at one point, we heard from our sales tax consultants who also specialize in cannabis taxes that the county of Santa Barbara was producing more legal cannabis than could satisfy the entire legal market in California,
Right.
just in one county. How did Mendocino County get left out of that? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Short-sightedness in, thinking that, not in my backyard, right? That's what,
Yeah.
what is it?
NIMBYism.
NIMBY.
Yeah, and it's so sad. And
We think we can help unlock that.
And I think that's an avenue of really getting out there and just saying, hey, farming and ag land is a part of it. Even if it's in the city, let's figure out how to make some money,
Yeah.
build an economy that works for people, create jobs. Yeah, okay, we got to deal with whatever the state says, but for the most part, let's just get out of the way, plan things smartly, and let people do what they're good at.
Whatever it is, we can't be a one-trick pony, right? And that's the beauty of being a county seat, is that we are the hub for so many essential services. So even during COVID, when places like Healdsburg were tanking because they relied so heavily on one industry, tourism, Ukiah maintained a relatively steady base because people still had to go to the doctor, they still went to Costco, they still needed their essentials, and where do you get all of that? You get that in the city of Ukiah. Mm-hmm. And so the diversification of services and industries is absolutely critical, but the city has been strangled for decades now with the inability to grow its boundaries, that we can't change what we're doing other than that infill development, which is very, very limiting. Think about how many undeveloped sites there are in the city of Ukiah. Very, very few.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true. I just think like, I think what people want to hear, what I would like to hear is like, no, it's not going to be like it is when you lived just in the county. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
We can, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, like we can improve it. We can make it better. And here's how, and here's why. What are your top concerns? This is how we're looking to address it. Yes, there will be some things that we're going to kind of have to see how things work out and adjust, just like any business plan or anything else. But like, people are looking at it as like, it's such a bad thing. And I'm not necessarily for it or against it, although I really appreciate what you brought here. I just think we all need to do better in this. We're all connected. Yes, you might have some imaginary line, which is the county and the city, but the reality of it is we're all one people here. There's not really that much of a separation, other than like you're saying, some services, some different, zoning laws based on density, stuff like that. That makes sense. But like, yeah, how can we all band together to make this a great place to live? And I don't want to say again, because it's still a great place to live. And that word is a little hot these days, right? So we don't need to say that, but like, let's bring this community back to like a thriving place for people to be, where you can raise a family, and survive and pay for it and do all of those things. And I think it takes people working together and being open-minded. And like you said, ask questions. And that takes you being willing to stand in the heat and answer their questions
all day long,
and make sure that they feel heard.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the biggest concern, is people aren't feeling heard. They're not against annexation, but they're like, why now? And why this much? And it makes me nervous.
Yeah.
And that
I get it.
That could be addressed.
Well, and it's like I said, it's like we can't promise a $5,000 check in your mailbox just because you became a city resident. So when people say, how is it going to benefit me immediately? Like, I really don't have an answer for that. But what I can say is that it's not going to hurt you. Everything in your world remains the same. But while you have your chickens and your guns and your whatever, we're over here building a better, a more sustainable community for your kids, for your grandkids. We're facilitating the development of housing. We're making sure that everybody in this valley has water, even in a drought. We're keeping our golf course green with recycled water. How arrogant is it to put drinking water on a golf course anyway,
totally agree.
right?
Yeah.
So these are the things that we're building. We're building the systems, the infrastructure, the delivery of services, and we know that we can do that because we do have a proven track record. Have people had some bad experiences here and there? Absolutely. Like I said, we have 1 million touch points with this community. We're not going to get it right every time, but we're going to try to do better every time. And we believe we can do that.
Yeah, I hope
awesome.
I hope you can, and I applaud you for making the effort, because
Thank you.
It certainly isn't.
I live here too.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. And I've seen so many people come with a grand vision for Ukiah, and I think have good intentions of making this a better place. And the pitchforks and the torches come out, and they get stabbed in the ribs to the point where they're just like, you know what? Fuck it. It ain't worth it. And they go away and things stay the same.
We got to be in this together. Yeah. And we never wanted this to become a divisive issue. We never thought that would happen going into it. Like I said, we really believed like everyone was on board because this had been talked about for decades. And obviously, like, we live in a little bubble sometimes and we don't realize what people don't know. And so in retrospect, could we have done more educational outreach before this started? Probably, yeah. But also we couldn't get in front of the city council. The city council had to provide direction to start the process. So we waited for that. And then we started providing information. But then everyone thought we had just come up with this in the back room smoking weed or whatever, right?
Yeah, man.
And we're just going to just ball through this thing and with no thought. But it's a long process, and we're still in the infancy stages of it. And it could still look very differently at the end. And it's going to because of the input that we've received. So we appreciate the questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on and chatting. And I think, the only thing that's guaranteed is change.
Yes.
And you either plan for it and know that it's coming and accept it and bend and work with it, or you die. And I think Ukiah is at a pivotal place right now.
I agree.
Where it either changes or we're looking at, a fairly certain future. And maybe I'm wrong there, but I do think that this is an important moment for this community to really get your facts straight. It's important for you to get them out, and maybe it's good, maybe it isn't. I'm not saying either way, but there's one thing that's obvious, and I'll get off my soapbox here, but it's that Ukiah needs change, and we got to figure something out, or we're just gonna end up going the way of the dodo,
Yeah.
We
We agree. So what is next? Is there any more public forums? Is there any, what's next in this process of annexation? Is there anything we should tell the people, the listeners, where to get information, where to,
Yeah, so we have a web page, and so many of the questions are very site specific. So it is hard to fully populate a frequently asked questions because people want to know about their well on their property, and it depends, it's that kind of thing. So we try not to get into that. So it's very general, but we continue to update new information. It's at cityofukiah.com/annexation. We tried to make it super simple. Will we have additional public forums? Probably. I don't have a date for one right now, but we just did one last Thursday. We literally stayed until no one had any more questions. We stayed, I think it was little over 3 hours. And we literally stayed until there were no more questions. And we will continue to do that. We do find that it's more effective to have conversations in small groups or one-on-one. It's this kind of mob mentality can make it kind of difficult to get information through both ways. And so we prefer to have conversations with people like we're doing today.
Yeah.
Awesome. We appreciate you coming and having this conversation.
I do have one last question. Yeah. What happens if tomorrow the agenda item to repeal the agreed upon
to terminate the tax sharing agreement?
What
I don't even really want to speculate. I don't. We're hopeful that the supervisors will not take that action. I think it's not a great look to back out of an agreement with every city in the county, right? So I think it was maybe a little hasty, and we're hoping to continue to dialogue with them. So Carter, you asked what the next steps are, and so we're kind of continuing to put together this application, which includes this plan for services that I described, and we're continuing to receive feedback and respond to that. So we are looking at ways we can change the boundaries and maybe look at our business license fee structure so that it works better for the types of industrial or manufacturing businesses that we haven't necessarily done a lot of work with before. So we're figuring all those things out. We don't have a specific date in mind. We just want to do it right. So we'll take as long as it takes.
And my last question, after my last question, Joe, you trying to pack your stuff and get out of here, dude. How does it get decided? Okay, yay, we're annexing. What is that? Do we vote on it, or how does that process work?
So the decision makers are actually a board called LAFCO, Local Area Formation Commission of Mendocino County, and their responsibility is special districts, boundaries, things like that. So we put together an application. We give it to the LAFCO board, and LAFCO has representatives from the county, from various cities, and from special districts, and an at-large member, so it's a diverse group. And they look at the application and they determine if we have adequately defended our plan for services, et cetera, et cetera. Does it make sense?
You're able to do it.
We're able to do it, right? There may be some back and forth there. They might say, we have some concerns in this area. Explain this, provide this, whatever. So fetch me this rock. We'll do that. And then ultimately, the LAFCO board will vote on it, and they will send out correspondence to all of the property owners and registered voters in the affected area. And the process could vary a little bit.
Cue the pitchforks.
Yeah, exactly. The process could vary a little bit depending on what our final application looks like. So I'm just going to kind of generalize here. But in general, they'll send it out to the property owners and the registered voters. And if 25% or more of those people submit a letter of protest, then that will trigger an election to all of those affected people. And there will be a vote. If more than 50% of the people protest, then it kills the application right there.
Jeez. And
Yeah.
all that hard work is for none.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, no work is ever wasted. You learn something from it.
Sure.
2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right.
Well, thanks for being of service.
Well,
You know,
public
It's-
servant. It's my job.
Yeah, but it's a hard job, and you get fire all the time from everybody you see. I'm sure it's hard for you to go to the grocery store without having a 2-hour long conversation with somebody who wants to pick your brain. But I appreciate what you're doing and your service to our community, because somebody has to do it, and I'm glad it's you.
Thank you so much.
And
I
for
appreciate
coming on
it.
our podcast.
This has been fun. I really appreciate your having me.
She showed right up, so thanks for doing that too.
We sent the bat symbol up in the air.
I
and
just stumbled
Shannon
in.
shows up.
It was an
How
oak,
can I explain?
it was an oak
How
tree.
can we help? Yeah, an oak tree symbol.
Well, that's the beauty of a small town and a small community like this. There were a couple of text messages and we made it happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we appreciate that too.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you
being
so
here.
much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll catch everybody next week. See you soon. Don't forget to call in, write, email, do your things, get a hold of us, and we'll see you on the next episode.